Taiyang wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the massive crystal sphere floating in the center of the sacred chamber. He was not supposed to be here. This was a place for royalty, for princes and princesses, for the most important people in the entire Galactic Imperium. He was just a maintenance engineer from Earth, a planet that most aliens still considered primitive and barely civilized. But the head engineer had ordered him to stand by during the ceremony. The scanner was ancient technology, older than recorded history, and nobody really understood how it worked. If something went wrong during the selection of the new emperor, Taiyang was supposed to fix it. He thought this was ridiculous. He had only been working on Valtos Prime for 6 months. He knew how to repair air filters and gravity generators, not mystical alien artifacts that chose kings. The chamber was enormous, with walls that stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows. Hundreds of aliens filled the space, representing every species in the Empire. Their skin colors ranged from deep purple to bright orange, from scales to fur to something that looked like living crystal. Taiyang felt very small and very human among them. Emperor Valtros IX lay dying on a platform at the front of the chamber. The old alien's breathing was shallow. His silvery skin had turned gray and his 4 eyes were dim. But he had insisted on living long enough to see the scanner choose his successor. The Empire needed a new ruler, and it needed one now. 20 candidates stood in a line before the scanner. 3 of them were the Emperor's biological children. The rest were adopted heirs from different alien species, chosen over the years to represent the diversity of the Empire. They all wore expensive robes decorated with jewels and precious metals. They all stood straight and proud, ready to become the most powerful being in the known galaxy. The High Counselor, a tall Valteran woman named Hyejin, raised her hand for silence. Her voice echoed through the chamber. We begin the ceremony of ascension. The scanner will examine each candidate. It will judge their blood, their mind, their heart, and their soul. The one it chooses will rule 847 worlds and trillions of citizens. The first candidate stepped forward. Princess Miyung, eldest daughter of the dying emperor, approached the scanner with confidence. She had been trained since birth for this moment. Everyone expected her to be chosen. The scanner's light changed from dark blue to bright blue. It circled around Miyung, passing over her body like she was being examined by invisible eyes. Strange symbols appeared in the air, written in a language so old that only scholars could read it. After a minute, the light turned red. The symbols vanished. A single word appeared above the scanner in a language everyone could understand. Negative. Miyung's face went pale. She stepped back, shock and shame in her eyes. Whispers filled the chamber. If the favorite candidate had been rejected, what would happen next? One by one, the other candidates approached. Prince Doyun, second son of the Emperor. Negative. Lord Jiwan, a warrior from the Krillian species who had saved the Emperor's life in battle. Negative. Lady Suman, a brilliant scientist who had discovered 3 new forms of faster-than-light travel. Negative, 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 negative. Taiyang watched from his corner near the maintenance alcove. He felt bad for the candidates. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, and the scanner was rejecting all of them. He wondered what would happen if none of them were chosen. Would there be a civil war? Would the Empire fall apart? The 19th candidate stepped away from the scanner, head bowed in disappointment. 1 candidate left. The chamber was silent now, the whispers replaced by tension so thick that Taiyang could almost feel it pressing against his skin. The last candidate, an elderly Valteran noble named Kangmin, approached the scanner. He was not expected to win, but he was the last hope. The blue light surrounded him. Everyone held their breath. Negative. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The scanner had rejected every single candidate. This had never happened before in the entire history of the Empire. Then something changed. The scanner's light shifted from blue to violet, a color Taiyang had never seen it display before. The crystal sphere began to spin faster, humming with a sound that made his bones vibrate. The symbols that appeared in the air were different now, brighter, more complex, written in a script that looked like it was burning. The violet light swept across the chamber, passing over the candidates, over the counselors, over the crowd of dignitaries. Then it stopped. The beam pointed directly at Taiyang. He froze. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at him. His heart hammered in his chest. This had to be a mistake. The scanner was malfunctioning, just like the head engineer had worried about. He was just the repair guy. He was nobody. But the scanner did not waver. The light stayed locked on him, and the symbols in the air grew brighter and brighter until they were almost painful to look at. Then words appeared, huge letters that floated above the scanner in every language spoken in the Empire. Sovereign Absolute. Crownless King recognized. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens were shouting, some in anger, some in disbelief, some in shock. The rejected candidates stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to rage. Guards moved forward, hands on their weapons, not sure if they should protect him or arrest him. High Counselor Hyojin raised her hands, calling for order, but her voice was lost in the noise. Someone threw something that shattered against the wall near Taeyang's head. He pressed himself back against the wall, wishing he could disappear. Through the chaos, a weak voice cut through the noise. Emperor Valtros Nime had raised himself up on his platform, using the last of his strength to speak. Silence, he commanded, and somehow everyone heard him. The chamber quieted. The dying emperor turned his dim eyes toward Taeyang. For a long moment he simply stared, as if seeing something that others could not. The crownless king, the emperor whispered. It is written in the oldest texts. A ruler from nowhere, a king who does not seek the throne. I did not think I would live to see the prophecy fulfilled. Your Majesty, Hyojin said carefully. Surely this is an error. The scanner must have malfunctioned. This is a human. His species joined the Empire only 40 years ago. They barely have space travel. They cannot even... The scanner does not make errors, the Emperor interrupted. His breathing was getting weaker. I know this is difficult to accept, but the scanner has spoken. The human must be tested. Tested? Prince Dohyun stepped forward, anger clear in his voice. Father, this is madness. I will not accept a primitive human as emperor. Then invoke the trial of worth, the Emperor said. Test him. If he is truly chosen, he will prove it. If not, he will fail, and we will know the scanner was corrupted. The Emperor's eyes closed. I am tired now. Medical staff rushed forward, but everyone knew the truth. The Emperor was dying, and his final command had been given. Taeyang would face the trial of worth, ancient tests that had not been used in thousands of years. If he passed, he would rule the Empire. If he failed, he would probably die. Taeyang stood in his corner, covered in grease from repairing machines, wearing his cheap work uniform, and tried to understand how his life had just been completely destroyed. This morning he had been worried about fixing a broken air recycler. Now he was apparently supposed to become a king. He looked at the scanner, still glowing violet, still pointing at him like an accusing finger, and he wondered if running away was still an option. The news spread across the Empire faster than light itself. Within hours, every inhabited world knew that the scanner had chosen a human to be emperor. Within days, the Galactic Imperium was tearing itself apart. Taeyang sat in a luxury apartment that had been prepared for him, staring at the news feeds on the wall screen. Half the Empire was celebrating, calling him a symbol of unity and progress. The other half was calling him an abomination, a mistake, a sign that the scanner had finally broken after 10,000 years. There had been protests on 70 different worlds. 3 planets had declared independence rather than accept a human ruler. The military was split, with some admirals swearing loyalty to him and others threatening to bomb the capital if he did not give up his claim. And through it all, Taeyang just wanted to go home and fix air conditioners. A knock on the door made him jump. He was not used to having guards outside his room, or servants waiting to bring him food, or diplomats requesting meetings. He was not used to any of this. Come in, he said. The door opened and Hyojin entered along with 2 other high counselors. They did not look happy. We need to discuss the trial of worth, Hyojin said without greeting. She sat down across from him, her 4 eyes studying him carefully. Do you understand what you have agreed to? Not really, Taeyang admitted. Nobody has explained much. Everyone is either too angry to talk to me or too scared. One of the other counselors, an insect-like alien named Wu Jin, made a clicking sound that Taeyang had learned meant disapproval. The trial of worth consists of 5 challenges. Each one tests a different aspect of leadership: wisdom, empathy, courage, sacrifice, and finally, truth. Most candidates who attempt the trials fail. Many die. Die? Taeyang felt his stomach drop. I thought this was just like some questions or puzzles. The trials are deadly serious, Hyejin said. But they are also the only way to resolve this crisis. If you pass, even your enemies will have to accept the scanner's choice. If you fail, the scanner will be recalibrated and a new selection will be made. And if I just refuse, if I say I do not want to be emperor? Then civil war, the third counselor said simply. She was a Valteran with silver markings on her face, and her name was Araeum. The empire is already fracturing. Half believe you are the rightful heir. Half believe you are a fraud. If you walk away without proving yourself either way, both sides will fight for control. Billions will die. Taeyang closed his eyes. This was not fair. He had not asked for any of this. But if people were going to die because of his choice, how could he choose to run away? Okay, he said quietly. I will do the trials. When do they start? Tomorrow, Hyejin said. The first trial is the Labyrinth of Ancestors. You will face the uploaded minds of 500 previous emperors. They will test you. Most candidates last less than an hour. After the counselors left, Taeyang tried to sleep, but his mind would not stop racing. He thought about calling his family back on Earth, but what would he even say? Hi, Mom. I might become Emperor of the Galaxy tomorrow, or I might die, not sure which yet. Instead, he spent the night reading everything he could find about the previous emperors. If he was going to face their minds, he wanted to understand who they had been. The next morning, guards escorted him to a chamber deep beneath the palace. The room was empty except for a chair and a helmet covered in wires. Thousands of aliens had gathered in an observation gallery above, come to watch the human either succeed or fail. Hyejin explained the trial. The helmet will connect your mind to the network. You will experience a virtual reality where the ancestor emperors exist as conscious programs. You must gain the approval of at least 250 of them. If your mind cannot handle the connection, you will suffer brain death. Great, Taeyang muttered. No pressure. He sat in the chair and put on the helmet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world dissolved. Taeyang found himself standing in a white void. In front of him stood an alien who looked like he was made of living stone, wearing ancient armor. I am Kalthos 7, the figure said, his voice like grinding rocks. I conquered 40 systems through strength of arms. I ruled for 300 years and never lost a battle. Fight me, human. Show me you are worthy. Taeyang looked at the massive alien warrior and knew he could not win. Kalthos was twice his size, trained in combat, and had centuries of experience. But maybe that was the point. Maybe this was not about winning. I cannot beat you in a fight, Taeyang said honestly. You are stronger, faster, and more skilled than I will ever be. But can I ask you something instead? Why did you value combat so much? What did war teach you that peace could not? Kalthos stared at him for a long moment. Then surprisingly he laughed. Finally, a candidate who admits weakness without shame. Very well, human. I will tell you why I fought. They talked for what felt like hours. Kalthos explained how he had fought to protect his people, not to conquer them. How he had learned that true strength was knowing when not to use violence. By the end, the ancient emperor nodded with respect. You may pass, human. You understand that a leader must know their limits. The white void changed. Another emperor appeared, then another, then another. Each one tested Taeyang differently. Some asked riddles. Some presented impossible moral choices. Some simply talked with him, trying to understand what kind of person he was. Taeyang did not try to impress them or pretend to be something he was not. When he did not know an answer, he said so. When he made mistakes, he admitted them. When he disagreed with an emperor's philosophy, he explained why respectfully. Hours became days in the virtual world, though only minutes passed in reality. Taeyang talked with emperors who had ruled during times of war and peace, prosperity and disaster. He learned about alien cultures he had never heard of, about conflicts that had shaped the empire, about the weight of decisions that affected trillions of lives. Some emperors rejected him. They said a human was too young, too inexperienced, too alien to ever understand the empire. Taeyang did not argue with them. He simply thanked them for their time and moved on. But more emperors accepted him than rejected him. They saw something in the young human that surprised them. His humility, his willingness to listen, his ability to look at problems from angles they had never considered. And most of all, his genuine care for people he had never met in worlds he had never seen. Finally, after facing the 500th Emperor, the white void faded. Taeyang found himself back in the chair, the helmet being removed from his head. He was soaking with sweat and shaking from exhaustion, but he was alive. Hyejin stood over him, her expression unreadable. The results are being calculated now. A display appeared on the wall. Numbers scrolled past. Finally, they stopped. Emperors approved. 287 out of 500. Trial status, passed. The observation gallery exploded with noise. Half the crowd was cheering. Half was booing. Taeyang just slumped in the chair, too tired to care. He had passed the first trial. Only 4 more to go. And if the first one had been this hard, he did not want to think about what came next. But as guards helped him to his feet and escorted him out of the chamber, Taeyang realized something. The emperors had not tested whether he could rule. They had tested whether he would rule for the right reasons. And somehow, despite everything, he had convinced them that he would. Maybe the scanner had not made a mistake after all. Or maybe it had, and he was just lucky. Either way, there was no turning back now. The second trial came 3 days later, barely enough time for Taeyang to recover from the first. His head still ached from having 500 conversations compressed into hours, and his dreams were filled with the faces of dead emperors. But the empire would not wait. More worlds were threatening to secede. Military ships were positioning themselves for possible conflict. And in the shadows, people were plotting his death. Taeyang learned about the first assassination attempt when his breakfast exploded. He had just sat down to eat when Yunji, his assigned royal guard, suddenly grabbed his plate and threw it across the room. The plate shattered against the wall and immediately burst into flames, releasing a toxic green gas that ate through the metal plating. Poison, Yunji said calmly, as if this happened every day. She was a Valteran woman with ice-blue skin and eyes that seemed to see everything. She had made it clear from the start that she thought a human had no business being emperor, but she took her duty seriously. Someone in the kitchen was paid to kill you. Taeyang stared at the smoking hole in the wall where his breakfast had been. His hands were shaking. Someone had just tried to murder him with poisoned food. Who? He asked. We are investigating, but you have many enemies, human. You should get used to people trying to kill you. Yunji checked the rest of the room for threats, her hand never leaving her weapon. The second trial begins in 1 hour. Try not to die before then. The second trial was called the Burden of Billions, and Hyejin explained it to him as they walked to the testing chamber. You will be connected to a neural simulation, she said. You will experience the lives of ordinary citizens across the empire. At the same time, you must make decisions about resource allocation, military deployment, and economic policy. Every choice you make will affect the people whose lives you are experiencing. How long does the trial last? Taeyang asked. Until you break or until you succeed. Most candidates break within the first few hours. The record is 6 hours. We will monitor your brain activity. If you are dying, we will pull you out. That is comforting, Taeyang said, though it was not. The chamber was similar to the first trial, but the helmet was different. It had more wires, more connections, and looked far more dangerous. As technicians strapped him into the chair, Taeyang noticed that some of them would not meet his eyes. Others looked at him with pity, the helmet lowered onto his head. Reality twisted. Suddenly, Taeyang was not Taeyang anymore. He was Bora, a factory worker on an industrial world, breathing toxic air for 12 hours a day to manufacture ship parts. His lungs hurt. His family was hungry because food prices had gone up again. He was exhausted and hopeless. But at the same time, Taeyang was still himself, sitting at a virtual command console with decisions to make. The factory where Bora worked was inefficient. He could shut it down and build a new automated facility that would be cheaper and cleaner. But that would put 10,000 workers like Bora out of work. Before he could decide, he was also someone else. Jinho, a farmer on a desert planet watching his crops die because the irrigation system had broken and nobody would pay to fix it. The government said there was no money for repairs. His children were starving. More lives flooded into him. Hana, a soldier bleeding to death on a battlefield, wondering why she was fighting a war that nobody seemed to want. Daehyun, a teacher trying to educate students with no books and no supplies. Sujin, a doctor with no medicine. Minsu, an elderly man alone in a station that everyone else had abandoned. Taeyang experienced all of them at once. Their pain, their fear, their small moments of joy, their desperate hopes. And with each life came decisions. Where should resources go? Which worlds got help and which were ignored? Should the military protect border colonies or pull back to save costs? Should the government invest in education or infrastructure or defense? Every choice had consequences he felt immediately. When he allocated more money to military spending, he felt Daehyun's despair as her school's budget was cut. When he reduced taxes, he felt Hana bleeding out because the military did not have enough medical supplies. When he tried to help everyone, nothing got enough resources and everything fell apart. Hours passed. Days. Taeyang lived dozens of lives simultaneously, each one showing him what his decisions meant to real people. It was overwhelming. It was impossible. How could anyone make choices when every option hurt someone? He started to understand why most candidates broke. It was easier to think of people as numbers on a report. 5,000 casualties, 1 million unemployed, acceptable losses. But when you experience those numbers as individual lives, as parents and children and people with dreams and fears, the weight was crushing. Taeyang felt himself starting to crack. The pain was too much. The guilt was too much. He wanted to give up, to escape back to his simple life repairing machines. Then he remembered something his father had told him. Back on Earth. His father had been a hospital administrator who had to make terrible choices about which patients got treatment when there were not enough beds. Every number in a report is someone's life, his father had said. Never forget that. It will hurt. But if you forget it, you will make worse decisions, so Taeyang did not forget. He held on to the pain. He let himself feel every consequence of his choices. And he kept working. He could not save everyone. That was impossible. But he could try to make choices that saved the most people, that reduced suffering even when he could not eliminate it. He could prioritize the needs of the weakest. He could look for solutions that others had missed because they were thinking in the old ways. When the factory efficiency problem came up again, he did not just shut it down. He found a way to retrain workers for new jobs before closing the old facility. It cost more and took longer, but fewer people suffered. When the irrigation system broke, he realized that 3 neighboring planets had similar problems. By pooling resources and fixing all 3 systems at once, he saved money and helped more farmers like Jinho. Again and again, Taeyang found solutions by remembering that he was making decisions about people, not numbers. Human thinking, he realized. Humans had learned these lessons the hard way, through centuries of mistakes and suffering. He could use that painful history to help the Empire avoid the same errors. Time lost meaning. Taeyang existed in the simulation, living hundreds of lives, making thousands of decisions. The pain never stopped, but he learned to carry it without breaking. Finally, the simulation ended. Taeyang collapsed in the chair, gasping. His face was wet with tears. His body ached as if he had been beaten. When they removed the helmet, he saw that he had been in the trial for 17 hours. Hyejin looked shocked. 17 hours. That is, nobody has ever lasted that long. Did I pass? Taeyang could barely speak. She checked the results. Yes. Your resource allocation scores were not perfect, but they showed consistent priority for protecting civilian lives while maintaining stability. You demonstrated empathy without becoming paralyzed. You passed. Taeyang did not feel victorious. He felt hollowed out. Somewhere in his mind, he could still feel the echoes of all those lives he had experienced. Bora and Jinho and Hana and all the others. They would stay with him forever now. Guards helped him to his feet. As they walked him back to his quarters, Yoonji spoke quietly. I watched the whole trial. I saw every decision you made, she paused. I still do not think a human should be emperor, but I am beginning to understand why the scanner chose you. That night, Taeyang could not sleep. He kept thinking about all the people depending on him all across the empire. People he would never meet but whose lives would be affected by his choices. The weight of it was terrifying. A message came through on his personal console. It was from Minho, his best friend from Earth. Minho was a cargo pilot, and he had just arrived at Valtos Prime after hearing the news. I am here if you need me, the message said. I still cannot believe my drinking buddy might become emperor. This is insane, but you are not alone, okay? I am here. Taeyang felt some of the weight lift. He was not alone. He had friends. He had people who believed in him, even when he did not believe in himself. 2 trials down, 3 to go. And somewhere out there, his enemies were planning their next move. Taeyang did not get a break after the second trial. The next day, Yoonji woke him at dawn with urgent news. "We know who tried to poison you," she said. "It goes higher than we thought." Much higher. She showed him evidence that made his blood run cold. The assassination attempt had been coordinated by Seojun, the chief advisor to Prince Dohyun. But that was not the worst part. Yoonji had discovered that Seojun had been manipulating the scanner's records for decades, ensuring that only Valteran candidates appeared worthy. The scanner's choice of Taeyang was not a malfunction. It was the first honest reading in generations. "Seojun knows we are close to exposing him," Yoonji said. "He will act soon. We need to be ready." Taeyang tried to process this information, but his mind was still exhausted from the trial. What can he do? The High Council will arrest him when they see this evidence. The High Council is divided. Some members are loyal to Seojun, and he has military support. Yoonji looked troubled. If he moves against us, it could start a civil war. She was right. That same afternoon, Seojun made his move. Alarms blared through the palace. Screens everywhere showed Seojun's face as he made a broadcast to the entire empire. He stood in the Orbital Defense Command Center, surrounded by armed soldiers. "Citizens of the Imperium," Seojun said, his voice calm but full of anger. "The scanner has been corrupted by foreign agents. The human is a fraud, planted by Earth to seize control of our empire. I have taken control of Valtos Prime's orbital weapons to prevent this conspiracy from succeeding. The human must renounce his claim immediately, or I will be forced to purge the corruption from our capital, even if it means civilian casualties." The broadcast ended. Taeyang stood frozen. Seojun was threatening to bombard the capital city from orbit. Millions of people would die. Within hours, the empire split into open war. Ships loyal to the old imperial family moved to defend Valtos Prime. Ships loyal to Seojun blockaded the planet. Other factions saw this as their chance to seize power, and fighting broke out across dozens of systems. Minho found Taeyang in his quarters, staring at the news feeds showing battles in space. "We need to get you out of here," Minho said. "Earth's fleet is on the way. Captain Jisoo is leading them. We can evacuate you back home." "I cannot leave," Taeyang said. "If I run, everyone will think Seojun was right. The empire will tear itself apart. It is already tearing itself apart. And staying here gets you killed." Before Taeyang could respond, Hyejin burst into the room with several other counselors. "We are invoking the 4th trial immediately," she said. "Now?" Minho looked at her like she was insane. "There is a war starting." "Which is exactly why we need to do this now," Hyejin said. "The 4th trial is the test of sacrifice. Taeyang must enter the scanner itself. It will analyze him completely, show his true nature to the entire empire. If he is genuine, people will see it. If he is not, he will die, and this crisis ends." "That is insane," Minho said. "You want him to risk death while people are shooting at each other?" "It is the only way to stop the fighting," Hyejin said quietly. "If the Empire sees the truth, really sees it without any doubt, they will know who to follow." Taeyang looked at his friend, then at the counselor. "What are the risks?" "High. The scanner will strip away all your defenses, all your walls. It will broadcast your deepest thoughts and memories to every screen in the Empire. If your mind cannot handle it, you will die. Even if you survive, everyone will see everything about you. Every fear, every doubt, every mistake you ever made. So I have to let billions of strangers see inside my head or let Seojun bomb the city." Taeyang laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Great options." Minho grabbed his arm. "You do not have to do this. We can find another way." But Taeyang knew there was no other way. The Empire was burning because of him. If he did not act now, millions would die. He thought about all the lives he had experienced in the second trial. Bora and Jinho and Hana and all the others. Could he let real people suffer because he was afraid? "I will do it," he said. They moved through the palace to the sacred chamber where this whole nightmare had started. The scanner still floated there, still glowing violet. Outside, explosions lit up the sky as ships fought in orbit. "The procedure is simple," Hyejin explained. "You step into the scanner's light. It will do the rest. We will broadcast everything to every screen in the Empire. There is no way to stop it once it starts." Taeyang looked at the scanner, remembering how it had changed his life. Then he looked at Minho, at Yoonji, at the counselors who had come to support him. If I do not make it, tell my family I tried to do the right thing. You are going to make it, Minho said fiercely. You are too stubborn to die. Taeyang stepped forward into the light. The world exploded. Suddenly, every moment of his life was happening at once. His childhood on Earth, playing with broken machines in his father's workshop, his mother teaching him to be kind to others. His first day of school, scared and alone. His first failure, when he could not fix an engine and felt like he had let everyone down. Every embarrassing moment. Every time he had been cruel without meaning to be. Every selfish thought. Every doubt. Everything he had ever hidden from others was now exposed. But the scanner also showed why he hid those things. His fear of not being good enough. His desperate need to help people because his father had died young, working too hard trying to save others. His belief that he did not deserve to be special, that he was just an ordinary person who got lucky. The scanner pulled deeper, finding memories Taeyang had forgotten. Times when he had helped others without expecting anything back. Moments when he had chosen kindness over convenience. 100 small decisions that showed who he really was, and then the scanner showed his time since arriving at Valtos Prime. The terror he felt when it first chose him. His temptation to run away. His decision to stay because he could not let others suffer for his cowardice. The pain of the trials. The weight of responsibility. And underneath it all, a simple truth. Taeyang did not want power. He just wanted to help people. The broadcast went out to every screen in the Empire. Billions of beings watched a young human's entire life. His thoughts, his fears, his motivations. They saw him without any filter, without any way to hide or lie. They saw him for exactly what he was. An ordinary person trying desperately to do the right thing in an impossible situation, and they saw something else. The scanner showed its own records, the ones Seojun had tried to hide. It showed how previous readings had been manipulated, how worthy candidates had been rejected because they were not Valteran. It showed that the scanner had been waiting for someone pure enough to read honestly. On his command ship, Seojun watched the broadcast and knew he had lost. His corruption was exposed. His lies were revealed. And worse, the Empire had seen that Taeyang was genuine, but Seojun was not ready to surrender. Fire the orbital weapons, he ordered. Destroy the palace. Kill the human. Do it now. His officers hesitated. They had seen the broadcast too. They had seen the truth. I said fire. Seojun screamed. One of the officers drew her weapon and pointed it at Seojun instead. You are under arrest for treason and attempted genocide. More officers joined her. Within minutes, Seojun was in chains. The blockade dissolved as ships that had followed him realized they had been deceived. Back in the sacred chamber, Taeyang collapsed as the scanner released him. He was alive, but barely. His mind felt raw, exposed, violated. Everyone knew everything about him now. Yoonji caught him before he hit the floor. You did it, she said, and for the first time there was real respect in her voice. The fighting has stopped. Seojun is captured. You won. Taeyang could barely speak. I do not feel like I won. That is probably why you did, Yoonji said. 3 days after the scanner revealed Taeyang's true nature to the Empire, he stood in the medical bay recovering. His mind still felt strange, as if pieces of himself were scattered across the galaxy for everyone to see. But the doctor said he would be fine, physically at least. The political situation had stabilized. Seojun was in prison awaiting trial. The military forces that had followed him had surrendered. Most of the secessionist worlds were negotiating to rejoin the Empire. The crisis was over. But Taeyang knew the hard part was just beginning. Hyejin came to visit him with news. The High Council is ready to proceed with your coronation. The trials are complete. You have proven yourself worthy beyond any doubt. In 2 days you will become Emperor Taeyang I, ruler of the Galactic Imperium. Taeyang looked out the window at the capital city below. Millions of beings going about their lives trusting that whoever ruled them would do so wisely. The weight of responsibility was crushing. I need to think about this, he said. Can I have some time alone? After Hyejin left, Minho came in. His friend sat down beside him without speaking at first. Finally, Minho said, Are you okay? No, Taeyang admitted. Everyone saw inside my head. They know everything about me. Every stupid thing I ever thought. Every mistake I made. How am I supposed to be emperor when everyone knows I am just me? Maybe that is the point, Minho said. Every other emperor could hide behind the crown, pretend to be perfect. You cannot do that. Everyone knows you are human, flawed, scared, but they also know you are genuine. That might be better than perfection. Taeyang spent the next day walking through the city, with Yunji following at a respectful distance to keep him safe. People recognized him everywhere. Some bowed, some cheered, some just stared, but nobody attacked him. Nobody shouted that he was unworthy. An old Valteran woman approached him near a market. She looked ancient, her silver skin wrinkled with age. "May I speak with you, young king?" she asked. "I am not king yet," Taeyang said. "And yes, please, I watched your trial. I saw your memories. I saw you as a child, playing with machines because you wanted to understand how things worked. I saw you help a neighbor fix their power generator for free because they could not afford to pay someone." The old woman smiled. "You were kind when nobody was watching. That is how I know you will be a good emperor, not because you are perfect, but because you try to be good when it does not benefit you." Taeyang felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you. I am so scared I will fail everyone." "Every good leader should be scared," she said. "It means you understand the weight of what you carry." That night, Taeyang made a decision. He called an emergency meeting of the High Council. "I will accept the scanner's mandate," he told them, "but not as a traditional emperor. I want to change everything." The councilors looked confused. Hyejin spoke carefully. "What do you mean?" Taeyang took a deep breath. "The scanner chose me not to rule you but to serve you. I do not want to be an emperor in the old way, where one person makes all the decisions and everyone else just follows. That system is broken. Seojin proved that. He manipulated it for decades and nobody could stop him because there were no checks on power." "What are you proposing?" asked Councillor Woojin. "A constitutional empire. I will serve as emperor, but my power will be limited by law. There will be an elected assembly to represent all the worlds. Terms will be limited. In 10 years you will choose whether to keep me or select someone else. It does not matter if they are human or alien or what species they are. What matters is that they earn your trust." The chamber erupted in argument. Half the council loved the idea. Half thought it was dangerous and radical. They debated for hours. Finally, Hyejin raised her hand for silence. "This is unprecedented, but then everything about you has been unprecedented, Taeyang. I support this proposal. Let us build an empire based on earned trust rather than inherited power." The vote was close, but it passed. The next day, instead of a coronation, Taeyang stood before the empire and announced the new system. He would be their leader, but not their absolute ruler. He would serve them, but only for as long as they chose to let him. The announcement shocked the galaxy. Some traditionalists were outraged, claiming he was destroying thousands of years of culture, but more people celebrated. Finally, they would have a voice in their own government. Over the following months, Taeyang worked with the council to write the first imperial constitution. It was hard work, full of arguments and compromises, but slowly they built something new, something better. Minho became his chief of staff, the friend who kept him grounded and reminded him where he came from. Yoonji accepted the position of chief of security. Her initial distrust transformed into fierce loyalty. Admiral Sungho, a military leader who had once mocked the idea of a human emperor, became his military advisor after watching how Taeyang approached problems with fresh thinking. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some worlds still refused to rejoin the empire, forming a coalition called the Purity Collective. They swore they would never accept the new order. But most of the empire embraced the transformation. Years passed. Taeyang grew into his role, learning from mistakes and celebrating successes. The empire became more stable, more fair, more representative of all its citizens. And when problems arose, Taeyang remembered the lessons from his trials. He listened to the people affected by his decisions. He admitted when he was wrong. He tried to be worthy of the trust placed in him. 10 years after the scanner chose him, Taeyang stood before it again. This time it was for re-election. The people of the empire would vote on whether to keep him or choose someone new. And this time the scanner's evaluation was just one voice among many. The scanner glowed violet again as it examined him. But when the results appeared, they included something new. Mandate fulfilled. Empire evolving. Then, surprisingly, the scanner indicated that 4 other candidates also registered as worthy potential leaders. The Empire had learned to cultivate leadership instead of just inheriting it. A young Valteran girl, brought by her parents to watch the ceremony, asked Taeyang afterward, "Are you sad that you are not special anymore? That other people can lead too?" Taeyang knelt down to her level and smiled. "Not sad at all. The scanner chose me to show that anyone could lead if they had the right intentions. If others can do it now, then I did my job right." The vote came in a week later. Taeyang won re-election with a comfortable majority, not because people worshipped him, but because they trusted him. He had spent 10 years proving that he meant what he said, that he truly wanted to serve rather than rule. But the victory felt less important than what happened next. 2 of the other candidates who the scanner had approved were appointed to high positions in the government. When Taeyang's second term ended, one of them might become the next leader, and that was fine. The Empire no longer needed a permanent ruler. It needed good leaders who would serve and then step aside. 20 years after that coronation ceremony that never happened, Taeyang walked through the capital city again, this time as an advisor to the 3rd elected emperor. He was older now, his hair gray, his face lined with age. He had finished his 2 terms and chosen not to run again. It was time for new leadership, new ideas, new perspectives. Children in the street still recognized him. "Crownless King," they shouted, using the nickname that had stuck with him throughout his rule. Taeyang waved back, smiling. He had never worn a crown. He had never wanted to. But he had changed the Empire forever, not through power or conquest, but through the simple act of refusing to claim authority he had not earned. The scanner still stood in the sacred chamber, but it served a different purpose now. Instead of choosing kings, it reminded each generation that leadership was not about birthright or power. It was about service, sacrifice, and the willingness to put others first. Above the chamber, the old inscription had been replaced. Where once it read "Blood of the Worthy," it now said "Service of the Willing." Taeyang stopped in front of his old apartment building, the place where he had lived as a maintenance engineer before his life changed forever. The building was still there, still housing workers who kept the city functioning. He wondered if any of them ever thought about how one of their own had become emperor. Minho found him there, still his friend after all these years. "Feeling nostalgic?" "Just remembering," Taeyang said. "Sometimes I miss fixing air conditioners. Life was simpler then. Would you go back?" If you could undo everything? Taeyang thought about all the people he had helped, all the lives that were better because of the changes he had made. He thought about the empire he had helped transform from an absolute monarchy into something more fair, more just, more humane. "No," he said finally, "I would not go back. The scanner chose me for a reason, not because I was special, but because I was willing to try, and I'm glad I did." They walked together through the city as the sun set. 2 old friends who had started as engineers and somehow changed the galaxy. The empire they left behind was not perfect. It still had problems, still had conflicts, still had people who needed help, but it was better than it had been. And it would keep getting better, as long as people remembered that the greatest leaders were those who refused the crown and chose service instead. The crownless king had ruled without ruling,